My point is, the problem with the distance work is that it's predicated on the idea that everything we do that's important is done in the abstract, right? In the domain of information exchange, explicit information exchange, and that's just not true. So that's a danger, because we don't know what that will do to cooperative organizations. Now, it might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing. I often meet with my son on Zoom when we're doing business-related, when we have a business-related matter, because it's actually easier to share our computer screens and do what we're doing than it is to meet in person. But that doesn't mean I don't want to meet him in person. I want to meet him in person, for sure. So there's that. That's a beware of what your technology is doing, because it's doing all sorts of things that you do not understand at all. Like, it could be that the decimation of the underlying social community in Washington is enough to drive polarization to the point where the whole system will rock and crumble. We have no idea, because we don't know why it worked. It worked. You know, I've been thinking about online universities. Well, that's easy. Lectures and tests, that's what universities do. It's like, no, that might be, maybe that's 5% of what universities do.
5%?
Yeah, I would say so. Here,
that
I can
low?
Well, here's a bunch of things universities do. They confer an identity upon you. Who are you? I'm a student. Okay, respectable. So for $120,000, let's say, it's more than that sometimes and less than that, you now have an identity for 4 years that your culture respects.
Okay.
And that means you have a container within which you can have intellectual freedom while you're deciding what you want to do with the rest of your life, instead of torturing yourself about how useless you are because you don't have a productive job yet. So that's a big deal. God only knows what that's worth, but not nothing. Well, how about finding a mate? So there's evidence now coming out, I don't know how reliable it is, you know, that it's about 2 women for every man in many academic institutions now. And that proclivity towards female dominance seems to be increasing. However, it appears that once the men drop to 1/3 of the population, the women stop going. Well, you think, why is that? Well, why the hell do you think it is? You go out of your little town, you know, you want to find a new peer group, and you're young. It's one of the things you want to do is find a mate. So part of the reason you go to a good university is because the sorting has already taken place. It's like, well, you know, this person's got a high school diploma and they're clued in enough to pursue college education.
Filtering system.
Yeah, so that's a huge deal. And then universities also act as a filtering system for businesses, because they use the SAT as a entrance requirement. So if you hire someone as a graduate from a high-end university, you knew that they had a high IQ, because the SAT is an IQ test. And God only knows what that's worth. And then you shed your peer group, your old peer group, and you establish a new one, maybe when you're a bit wiser. And that's one of the major elements of my college education was the transformation of my peer group. That was huge. And then there's personal relationships between you and the professors, if you're lucky enough to establish them. That's a big deal, because then you get to interact with someone who's an embodiment of the academic tradition and see how they act. That's different than listening to what they say in a lecture. And then there's the social surround, the joint meals. They make a big deal of this at Cambridge and Oxford, because the students eat together in their colleges, and God only knows how important that is. And then there's the part of being an embodied actor in that academic tradition and learning to speak and write. And so that's just a handful of things universities do, and that's not lectures and tests online. And to reduce it to that might destroy it completely, could easily be. And it's the same with our political institutions. They depend on these real world substructures that, like engagement in civic society, we have no idea how important that is. And the fact that that's starting to deteriorate in Washington could be fatal.
You know what I would be curious about? You know how in America, the one school university that was popping 20 years ago, and everybody said, oh, I can get my MBA online. It was Phoenix University. Phoenix University, right? And I recruited a few of their sales guys, and they're legit sales guys, because they're selling is what they're selling. I saw their sales training was great, but one of the things I'd be curious about is, how much do they get from boosters? Like, kids graduate from Phoenix University and they got the degree online. Like, I wonder, oh my gosh, I'm so loyal to the school. I got to give these guys 10 grand. You know, I want to contribute because this university changed my life. Did it though? Like, is there, you know what I'm saying? Like, because
You're
for
saying
me,
there's no culture.
I
There's
don't
no
think,
games.
how do you do that? Like, you know, hey, you want me to go to church on Sundays on a Zoom? Yeah, okay, great, fine. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll listen to a service. I mean, every church does it nowadays, and they'll say, our service today was viewed by 73 countries because YouTube said 73. Oh, we 73 countries, right? But am I sold, you know, am I really emotionally? I don't know. I wonder, like, validates your point about the 5% lecture and, you know.
Well, you also don't know what people were doing when they went to church. And people were cynical about that. The people who fell out of the church, they say, well, you know, they're 1 hour a week Christians. It's like, well, better an hour of contemplation of higher order moral virtue than zero. So zero's not much. And you think, well, the church didn't do that good a job. It's like, okay, do better. See if you can do better.
Yeah.
And so, but then also, well, what are you doing when you go to church? Well, you're singing. That's not nothing. With other people, that's not nothing. You're trying to orient yourself ethically with your community. You're sacrificing a part of your weekend to indicate your willingness to do so. Like you're in a drama, right? You're acting out something. And it's not merely fictional. It's like we get up in the morning, and you saw this in The Simpsons all the time with Marge Simpson trying to get her family to go to church, which they did. It's like, get up, put on a suit, dress up, go out there with members of your community and show your allegiance to something higher. And the atheists are cynical about that sort of thing, you know, because they reduce God to a set of propositions, but they don't have any real appreciation for the embodiment. It's like I was in these beautiful chapels in Cambridge and Oxford. My God, they're so beautiful. It's just beyond comprehension. They're so stunningly magnificent. And the boys' choirs were singing, and they have excellent boys' choirs. They're like world class. And then they read these ancient words, and those things ring true. And there was a bunch of ideological nonsense at one of the chapels I went to, and that was off-putting. But you have to be there and doing that for that to work, right? It's not replaceable in any real sense by a virtual experience, because it's not just information content, or it's not abstract information content. It's the acting out of something. And that's what happens when you join a civic club. You know, it's a mark of willingness to participate. It's a mark of faith in the system. And you think, well, I'm cynical about the damn system. It's like, good for you. You're not naive, you know, thumbs up for you. But you're going to top out in your wisdom at cynicism? That's pretty dismal, man. You can do better than that. Like cynicism, that's beginner's place.